Hey everyone, welcome to this podcast called Ken Reads, where I can read out your letter that you've shared with me in the hopes that I can better help you understand what the F just happened between you and the last partner you were dating, whether it was in a relationship or a situationship. I look at these experiences from the lens of attachment theory. I don't just come up with thought terminating cliches like, they're just not that into you, or if they wanted to, they would. While some of those phrases might have their benefit in other dynamics, I try and look at this from the lens of, is there perhaps an insecure attachment issue that's at play in these particular dynamics? And though I am an Australian counsellor, I am not someone who is going to be responding to these letters as if I was with a client. I'm here to provide validation, yes, but I can't provide any diagnoses on these. So even if, a lot of people might understandably hear this and be like, well, that sounds like a narcissist. At best, I'll probably say, sounds a bit narky. I probably won't go any further than that out of respect to my ethical boundaries in regards to what I can and can't do. If you find this of benefit to you, fantastic. That's what I want. And if you want to submit your letter, you're very welcome to once there is obviously availability per month. And I'll happily read out and share my own 2 cents as to what I think has gone on in your dating experience to offer you a sense of validation for what you've been through and also to give other people listening a chance to feel like maybe this relates to what they've also experienced as part of collective healing. So with that all out of the way, let's dive in to the latest letter. Tonight's letter comes from Jonathan. I'll call him John for short. John writes, I just wanted to start by saying how much of an impact you and your team have had on my life and relationships. The work you guys do is really important, and I hope you know that. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I will speak for myself and say I have noticed the impact that I've had on a lot of people. I think my team respectively feel they've had a huge impact on people with the work they do. So thank you very much. It's greatly appreciated. About 3 months ago, I matched with someone on Hinge. We'll call her Charlotte. She's 25, I'm 23. Honestly, when we matched, I was in disbelief. She was easily the most attractive person I'd matched with, and she seemed super keen on me. Messaging back and forth with her those first couple of weeks was really fun. She matched my energy, she was funny, and I just liked her in general. She started asking me to go out for drinks, and I was a bit hesitant. She had to chase me to an extent. I'd never been on a proper date or had a serious girlfriend before, so I wasn't really sure what to expect. Eventually, I agreed and we went out. It was an awesome night, and we had heaps of laughs and we shared a kiss at the end. So, John, if I'm reading this correctly, you are by definition having a bit of a, I don't want to say you're a late bloomer, but you are late blooming in terms of relationships from the sounds of it. Just trying to think. Yeah. So, you know, I generally I think people would have probably tried a relationship in their teens. Doesn't always happen. It didn't happen for me in my teens. It was in my 20s that I, had my first relationship. But I was going to say, this is an interesting introduction because if we presume there are going to be some insecure attachment issues that are going to arise in this relationship, and this is your first relationship, something tells me this probably would have hit you like an atom bomb. Because I can tell you this from experience, people's first love, first attachment, experience is already pretty, like they're respectively pretty seismic. But when they come together, it's sort of like a perfect storm because it can really have such a huge impact on, your understanding of relationships, what's, considered normal, what's not normal. So I have to say, I'm really already fascinated by the start, the premise of what you're sharing. And I could imagine if Charlotte is this really beautiful, funny girl who seemed maybe a little bit, I don't want to say she's out of your league, but if you just felt like, what the hell? Like, I got so lucky. Like, this is just so cool that it would be very easy to pedestal someone like her. So, yeah, I'm really keen to see where this goes because I'm no stranger to some of the thoughts and feelings that you're probably going through, and I wouldn't be surprised many people listening in might also relate to this. Let's get into it. She started asking me to go out for drinks, and at first I was hesitant. Oh yeah, I read that. The night was also the first time I noticed something was a bit off. She told me she usually only goes for quote unquote ugly guys, which I thought was a bit strange and insulting. I have to agree with that. I've never had issues with women and thought myself to be a decent looking person. When I reacted, she quickly took it back and said she didn't mean it about me. She also told me she'd been a victim of trigger warning, domestic violence issues coming up. So if anyone wants to step away, please do so now. With that being said, let's continue. She also told me she'd been a victim of quite intense domestic violence, which lasted about 2 to 3 years. That's terrible. I looked past both things. I figured everyone has their issues, and who am I to judge? Let's pause here. I really get this one because it's true that on one hand, we all have our baggage, we all have our stuff. But I think there is a significant difference between someone who has a funky quirk and someone who is allowing their backstory, their trauma to dictate their behavior. And whilst we have no evidence to suggest that domestic violence in and of itself has shaped Charlotte to be the person that she is now in dating, I'm suspecting that was probably a romantic relationship where the domestic violence occurred because she said it lasted 2 to 3 years, so it suggests that's probably not family related DV. But in saying that, her comment about she only goes for ugly guys, that's a pattern. And so it makes me think, what is the reason, Charlotte? You go for ugly guys. What's the self-esteem stuff going on there for you? So that's why I think there might be something going on there for her. And it's part of a bigger issue in terms of how she relates to people and her confidence with dating certain people as well, too. So yeah, something feels a bit off about this. And just also so everyone's aware, I understand that not every DV survivor, will necessarily behave like Charlotte, but I want to be balanced and say no one deserves domestic violence. I don't think I imagine Charlotte's situation was horrific. For it to last 2 to 3 years, that's a substantial amount of time. So that's terrible what she's been through. And in addition to that, there's obviously some other stuff going on here as well too. Let's continue. We kept hanging out casually, drinks, sports, games, just chill stuff. Oh, sorry, that's sports games, not sports and games. Over time, it got a bit more serious. I met her housemates and some of her friends, and I started staying over at her place every now and then. That overwhelmed and overstimulated her a bit, which is something she told me, as she was used to her own space. But at the same time, she said she loved waking up and seeing me there. Am I sensing a little bit of an avoidant attachment? I mean, it was kind of predictable because of what everyone writes me in, but at the same time, I never try and assume that everyone has an avoidant attachment until I read what's happening and I'm like, yep, there it is. So that's very interesting. She says she likes her own space, but at the same time, she loves waking up and seeing you there. Am I also sensing a fearful avoidant attachment style? I feel like when avoidants say they want space, it's more than just I want distance. It's more of, can I please have some distance so I can shut down these intense emotions which I'm not comfortable with? So that's, I think, the definition of space. It's not the healthy regulatory space. It's more of these feelings are uncomfortable. Please, everyone go away and stop eliciting these feelings in me so I can feel better about myself. One night after drinks with her and one of her friends, we were chatting about some sexual experiences. Now, nothing super hectic. I accidentally let it slip about a girl I'd been with before. Again, nothing crazy, but it upset her. I understood why, and I explained that I'd never been in anything serious before and I was still figuring things out, like what I should or shouldn't say. She seemed to get that, but then she started bringing up her sexual history with pro sports players. Whoa, in a way that made me feel really bad. She told me that she had first moved to my city that when she first moved to my city, she just slept with men for company, that she was empty at the time and was going through a massive period of man hating. She knew it was hurting me because I told her to stop, but she kept going, even telling me one guy was the best sex she'd ever had. Ooh, okay. Okay, wow. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. This is helping me better understand her history so much, and this is a red flag fucking city. Okay, let's get into this. I think that it's one thing for you to be explaining about your sexual experiences with a woman, and I do not want to excuse anything that might be uncomfortable to Charlotte. That's one thing. And everyone has the right to say, that doesn't feel good. And it sounds like there was obviously something there that Charlotte didn't agree with or like from what you shared. That's one thing. She's allowed to feel that way. But I find it particularly egregious that when you set the boundary to her and said, can you please stop sharing all this stuff about these guys you've been with who are quote unquote pro sports players, that's, that's intense. That's too much. You know, it's also one of those things too where it's actually offensive. It's like, I don't need to hear this. This is making me feel shit about myself. We could say things like, oh, well, if you're secure, you wouldn't feel that way. I just think this is disrespectful at the very least. You've asked her to not do this, and she's just gone ahead and done it anyways. I just think there's obviously a reason for her doing that to disrespect your boundaries. And I think this does speak to something she declared, which is that she has a bit of a man-hating thing going on. I'd love to know what her relationship is with her dad, and also what her relationship with men is like, because there's something here in this where I feel like she likes to dominate, she likes to control. She's obviously had a terrible past with domestic violence, and I wouldn't be surprised if that was at the hands of a male partner. So it really makes me wonder what she's been through, because it doesn't sound to me like that hatred towards men has gone anywhere. So that's really fascinating. In fact, this may be the first time in a reading a letter that I'm actively picking up on some real misandry, hatred to men, that's distinctive from the misogyny that usually comes out of partners that I often talk about as well too. Like, to me, it almost seems like her sexual conquests have been acts of domination to feel like she's had control against men. But the way she's going about it is quite violent. It almost makes me wonder, I'd almost love to ask her rhetorically, like, what happened to you? What's the reason for this extent of rage towards men and this need to dominate, particularly sports players? Like, you know, doing this with a lot of guys who are in sports teams and stuff like that, that's a very particular kind of guy as well, too. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that players on sports teams can't be emotionally available, but let's be real. A lot of them who are men, I mean, I think are more of a particular group of people where it's not really a space for, I could be very wrong with what I'm saying, and people can share this with me. I am talking about a stereotype here, but I'm saying I do think people of sports teams generally have their own vibe and flavor in terms of personality and also the things they like to do compared to probably someone like yourself, John. And so it makes me think, what is it about her, Charlotte, that likes that kind of guy? That's the thing I'm interested in. Again, I've worked with some people who are into sports, athletics, the gym. I've had such amazing sessions with them. They're very smart people, and I think they're fabulous in terms of what they work with because they can be very action orientated. But the way they've adapted to life is not often the every person experience, if that makes sense. Like, it's a very particular kind of person. So yeah, this paragraph alone has said a lot about her and the kind of proclivity she seems to have towards certain people. So yeah, you seem like you could be quite atypical for her in that you sound like you're not the kind of guy she would normally go out with. But again, I feel like she's trying to control and dominate parts of this as well too. So I would be interested to see if some of this man-hating stuff comes out across the span of this as well too. Anyways, John writes that despite that, I kept going with things because I really liked her. And her best friend, who I saw as a straight shooter, told me she had never seen Charlotte act like this with anyone, and it looked like we'd been dating for months. Yeah, that's what I thought. That made me feel good, like maybe I was doing something right. But it also sucked me deeper into this emotional bullshit. Okay, interesting. Keen to hear what emotional bullshit you're referring to in just a second. But yeah, I don't think you've done anything wrong based on this letter. And I mean, it's not to, I don't want to play devil's advocate and be like, well, what were you doing in this to elicit these responses? But it's just to say, no, from the sounds of it, it sounds like you were doing, you know, what you thought was right for building a relationship, especially considering this was your first. Later on, Charlotte would apologize after that night. She said she didn't mean it and blamed the alcohol. Hmm. Yeah, even if the alcohol was involved, she felt the need to say that to you. So something tells me she obviously felt the need to disclose that stuff and to feel good about herself in that moment. So again, she didn't like your boundary, and I think she liked, pushing it. And I think this is her self-sabotage. I actually met a person like this once where they actually said, I enjoyed cheating on my partner, who was a guy, because it allowed me to feel like I was getting back at my father. And I loved her self-awareness, but I will, and this was an acquaintance, not a client, but I remember thinking, interesting pattern. And I can get it because I think that part of us that wants rebellion and wants revenge against our, family can show up in different ways. I know for some people it's with money. They're like, if I was financially controlled, I will spend. If I was not allowed to speak up, I will yell and scream. So it's just interesting how those parts of us can often try and fight back against what we've been through when we're younger. And it's like an inner teenager that's trying to like get, control and safety over what we never had. Anyways, looking back, I know it was bullshit, but we kept seeing each other. Around that time, she told me she was an avoidant attacher. Oh, she knows about this. She's actually super self-aware. She knows exactly where her issues come from, and she'd even explained them to me in detail, like she was watching herself from the outside. She once said it was like a car crash. She could see it coming but couldn't stop herself. That's impressive that she knows this. And that's exactly how it felt. There are moments where she'd spiral and say things like she felt overwhelmed and suffocated, or that she was scared because I was too healthy and she didn't want to break me. But then she'd be texting me hours later saying how much she missed me and couldn't wait to see me. It was confusing as hell. That push-pull, the whiplash, it kept me constantly off balance. I wanted to believe her self-awareness meant she was working on it, but I realize now it just meant she could explain her damage without actually doing anything to change it. Before I jumped onto this letter reading, I was watching one of the latest videos that came out from Anna Runkle, the crappy childhood fairy, and she was raking one of her letter writers across the coals because essentially the criticism she had for the letter writer was you seem to be using a lot of psychological jargon without actually having done any of the healing work. And that's what I feel Charlotte is doing in this, in that she obviously understands her patterns and her stuff, but she continues to allow it to happen anyways, which means we are, I think, putting her in the category of an emotional abuser. So not great. And the fact that you can recognize this is fantastic. She'd say things like, I don't feel like we have substance, or just saying we miss each other isn't enough. And I'd say, okay, so what do you want from me? I stick around anyway because I cared. Then her parents came down from interstate and wanted to meet me. I thought this was a good sign. She was super affectionate with me in front of them, even though she'd always said she struggles with public affection. We stayed at her place that night, and the next morning she woke up hungover and in a terrible mood. She spiraled again, said her usual stuff, but also opened up more about her childhood, how her parents weren't loving, there you go. They were always working, and she had to care for her severely autistic brother. She said they even kicked her out after she left her abusive relationship. Wow. Okay, that I think clears some things up. So it sounds like the abusive relationship was the one which probably had the domestic violence. That's my assumption. But being kicked out of a family after that happened, fuck me. It sounds like the parents have had issues for a long time. That's terrible. Oh my God, those parents don't sound great at all. And also, I know this for a fact. I have spoken with people who lean avoidant who've also said to me, and not, like I've had some insecurely attached people in my circle come forward and say to me, I've grown up with a sibling who was, you know, basically got a lot of support from my family growing up, and I wasn't really, given the nourishment that I needed emotionally, physically, care-wise, and it can have a huge impact on how you relate. And I think to have a severely autistic brother, you know, would likely complicate things tremendously because if the entire family unit has to orbit around the needs of one child, that can seriously impact what happens to you as a child. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's grown up feeling not good enough, unworthy, a whole gamut of things. But she's obviously taken it one way. I know some other people who've had similar experiences and they've gone the complete other way. So it does seem like her trauma has led her to go down the path of the dark side, so to speak. Um, Not every person who's an avoidant attacher is necessarily going down the dark side. I just mean, I feel like she's not really doing anything to break free of her trauma. She recognizes her chains. She recognizes those bonds that bind her to her past without wanting to break free of them. John writes, all of that gave me more compassion for her, but at the same time, I never really knew how to respond. Whenever I showed any real emotion, she'd call me so dramatic, half jokingly, but never fully joking, and never fully kind either. That's a bit rude. It left me walking on eggshells, second guessing what I was allowed to feel or say. I was always trying to strike the perfect balance. Be emotionally available, but not too emotional. Present, but not overwhelming. Steady, but never too much. I thought maybe if I could just get things right, things had settled down, but they never really did. Yeah, this is a great example of where you feel like the yardstick, the goalpost, it constantly keeps moving and you never feel enough. I gotta be honest, Charlotte is sort of making me feel like she's got some narcissistic stuff going on as well too because I feel like for her to say you're being so dramatic in regards to, you know, demonstrating emotion is ridiculous. Like, unless, of course, you were doing something that would be definitively dramatic, it sounds to me like she just doesn't have a strong capacity for receiving emotion from other people. So this is not great. I just think that's a very rude thing to say too. Hearing all of that just made me want to be there for her more. I wanted to show her real love, the kind that she hadn't had before. But things got tougher. I'm going to be honest, this is starting to give me covert narcissistic vibes. Her work started getting really busy, and she couldn't give me as much time during the day to text or even after work because she was always so tired. She told me she felt overwhelmed trying to balance me, her job, and her friends. Her friends always came first, which I completely respected. I'm going to push back on that and say, yeah, no. I mean, don't get me wrong, friends should have their place and should probably come first, but I feel like she's using her friends as a way of not interacting with you. There's discernment in this. I think having friends as an anchor for our life whilst we're building a relationship is a good thing. It helps individuation, but I think she's using them as a way of avoiding connecting with you and working through her stuff. Her friends had always been there for her through her toughest times, and I never expected her to change that. Reasonable. Her best friend's partner passed away and she shut down emotionally. She told me she couldn't even cry for her friend and that she felt broken. I supported her, told her I understood if she needed time, but she still felt guilty for not being able to show up for me. Yeah, I think the fact that she feels this way, and from the sounds of it, she understands a lot of this therapy stuff, but it sounds like she hasn't actively been working on a lot of this. And it really does sound like, what's happening here at this point, John, is it sounds like you are essentially pivoting your entire self and safety around her emotional well-being. And this is the definition of trauma bonding. Her mental health has now dominated the field of this relationship, which is not great for you. After a while, I noticed I was starting to carry her emotions. See? And also, if you've started to notice that, it makes me wonder, John, have you ever had to do that for other people in your life as well, too? Because when you start playing the surrogate therapist, usually people have gotten to that stage for a reason. So just putting it out there. Maybe not, maybe, I don't know, just putting it out there. If she sent me a happy message, I'd be over the moon. If it was flat or distant, I'd spiral. Yeah, this is now definitely in the realm of codependent sort of stuff going on. It does not mean that you are codependent, John. What it means is if you're feeling so much how the other person's feeling and it drastically affects your well-being, your sense of self has now completely been taken over by her emotional well-being. These are absolute red flag warning signs for anyone's system listening in, by the way. And bear in mind, the reason I say this is codependency land without being codependent is because To be fully codependent is to basically deny the full thing that's happening to you, to act as if like this is normal and to justify its continued existence. And my assessment of this may change if I read more of this and I find out that, for instance, this continues, things are still going on between John and Charlotte, but something tells me this probably is not the case. But, that is definitely a part of trauma bonding and codependency. So that's very much a thing. Uh, I remember one night we were watching TV and she randomly told me, sometimes when I look at you, I don't know if I even want to be with you. She said I'd changed. I told her I'd only changed because I felt like I had to walk on eggshells around her. Good response. Always wondering if she actually wanted me. I said I didn't think she loved herself, and if that's the case, how can she love someone else? She didn't take that well. No, I bet she didn't. After that, I told her I needed space. Excellent. Good on you. A week later, I messaged her and said we needed to chat, and I tried to end things, but she somehow convinced me not to. Then a few days later, she messaged me saying we needed to end it. Okay, great. So it's only on her terms. I replied with a kind message and she thumbs downed it. I asked why and she did it again. I was hurt, so I said, have a nice life. And she laugh reacted. That was it for me. I deleted our chat and blocked her on socials. I gotta be honest, I'm gonna be honest. We have really entered into covert narcissism land for me with this one. I feel like it's just such levels of pettiness and passive aggressiveness. It's like, we know that she's self-sabotaging this because she fears she's not ready for a healthy relationship. And all of her behavior gets you tiptoeing around her emotional stuff. You come to a point where you're like, I just think I need some space to reevaluate it. And you're saying, can we talk about where things are at? And you say, I think we should end things. She goes, no, no, we shouldn't. And then she dumps you to make her feel better about herself. In fact, this reminds me so much of a case that I'm working on at the moment with someone. And what's also really interesting too is the passive aggressive emojis that you get. The thumbs down, the laughing emoji when you say have a nice life. And look, I admit that, when you're hurt, saying have a nice life is a bit of a jab. I get that. But I think, this is the sign of someone who's burnt out. They've really hit their limit and it's just like, I can't do this anymore. This is all I've got to give and this is what I'm going to say. Again, in an ideal context, we wouldn't be resorting to this. But I think given the circumstances, your system just broke and was like, fuck this shit, I'm out. Um, but I imagine she was also reacting from a place of hurt and pettiness. So I can understand also why you blocked her on social. Bit of a step to protect yourself. I get that. But John, I understand why you've done what you've done. The next day, she sent me a half-assed apology saying she doesn't want me to hate her because she's got a big fear of abandonment. Well, that's obvious. I told her I didn't accept the apology and that she really needs to think about the people she hurts. Good fucking answer. Thumbs up. Secure behavior. I love it. She said she was just trying to joke around and it wasn't that deep. Okay, she's definitely in narcissistic land. I kept texting a little after that, mostly just being polite, but it wasn't really going anywhere. Then she told me her grandfather was dying and her brother was suicidal. It's like, okay, I understand that's really tough what she's going through, but why do you need to hear about this? I had no idea what to do with that info. Exactly. It's like this kind of goes back to that point you were making where you felt like you were her emotional container. I think this is just so selfish because it's clearly, as we know, she can't deal with the emotions of others, probably let alone her own. When her best friend, well, one of her close friends' partner died, she couldn't handle it. She just shut down. So now she's using you as her emotional dumping ground to talk about this stuff. That's a violation. When counselors and therapists receive clients, it's expected that they obviously, in the space that we've created, share their stuff. In friendship and partnership, we obviously self-disclose and say, hey, can I talk about XYZ? But we know that she doesn't have the capacity to regulate any of this. So it's interesting how she uses you as a sort of receptacle dumpster for all of this stuff rather than actually working through it. Anyways, John writes, I just said, I'm so sorry to hear that. Hope it works out okay. Fair enough. Reasonable response to protect her boundaries. And a few days later, she started messaging me updates about her life like nothing had ever happened. So I tried to be friendly, but it triggered my anxiety all over again. I bet it did. Especially when she told me she'd been drinking on the weekends where she messaged me. That made me feel super anxious, so I said I needed space again and didn't feel comfortable talking. 2 hours later, she messaged me saying, I know you don't want to talk, but don't you wish you were at the sports game? That was the last thing I ever heard from her, and I blocked her number after that. Wow. Wow. Okay, wow. I just think that the amount of boundary violations from her is egregious. And I think she definitely has one. She's a massive control freak. I'm going to be brutally honest. I actually think she's got some serious covert narcissism inside of her. Like, I think a lot of this is so emotionally manipulative. She does have a fearful avoidant attachment style, but I think there's layers of other stuff going on too. Like, I can just feel like oh, there's some really nasty stuff here. Like there's pettiness, there's wanting to like poke the bear, there's wanting to, use you as an emotional dumping ground. It's more than just attachment issues at this point in time. John continues, she's just a little girl. That's what I see now when I look back. A scared, overwhelmed kid still carrying the weight of a childhood that forced her to grow up way too fast. Well, that's definitely true. I was going to say partially true as well. There's other stuff too. That lens makes it all hurt more, not less, because I didn't fall in love with some calculated manipulator. I fell for someone who never learned how to receive love without running from it. When I said that she's got covert narcissism, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying she's got a personality disorder, but she's definitely emotionally manipulative. And just putting it out there, just because someone's emotionally manipulative doesn't mean they're necessarily sociopathic or calculating it 10 steps in advance to make you go through the light Yagami experience of Death Note. It just means that this is her survival behavior. She's not outgrown her survival stuff. So you are right in what you're saying, but let's not downplay the significance of how bad this situation is with Charlotte. But even with all that understanding, I know this is not someone I want in my life. There's no future in something like that. I feel a lot of pity for her. She's had a rough life, and I really did want to help her. I'm naturally empathetic as a person, and I thought maybe I could love her through it. Ah, the pain of youth and thinking that we can outlove someone's trauma. But her trauma is so, so deep, and she's not in a place to be in a healthy relationship. No, she's not. She told me she wants to remain friends, but I see now that it's just her way of keeping people in her orbit, a way to feel less guilt, to convince herself she's not a bad person. Sometimes I feel like reaching out just to tell her how fucked up her behavior is and how badly she treats people. But honestly, I know that staying silent hits harder than anything I could say. She'll feel that more. She won't be able to twist my words, shut down mid-conversation, or ghost the message and leave me gutted. Can I just say the fact that you wrote that sentence, she won't be able to twist my words, shut down mid-conversation, or ghost the message and leave me gutted suggests she's done this to you before? Like it suggests to me that you've been on the receiving end of a lot of this behavior and you're really hurt by it. So it says to me that you've arrived at a point where you've really been battered and bruised and also come to a place of probably like, fuck this, I just can't do this anymore. That's pretty big and intense. Not everyone's gone through probably a lot of that, but it sounds like you've gone through it all with her. And yeah, I want her to feel it. God, I think there's not a person I don't know who wants their ex to feel what they've put them through. So I really feel you there. I wanted her hurt because maybe that's what it'll take for her to finally see the damage she's causing and hit the rock bottom she's been running from. Maybe then she'll actually change, but I'm done. I won't be there for her, or will be there for her when she finally does confront herself. Good on you. One moment that really stuck with me, one I forgot until recently, was that when she compared us to the Vampire Diaries, she said she was like Eleanor, and I was like Stefan. The Stave, good guy. I really need to watch the Vampire Diaries. I've only ever watched like part of the first season of True Blood. But she was always drawn to Damon, the chaos, the danger, the heartbreak. She said it was like it was inevitable for her. She couldn't help herself. That reminds me of Damon from what's it called? House of the Dragon. If anyone's seen that Game of Thrones spin-off. But yeah, it seems to me like she's definitely likes the dark and edgy guys who are trouble. And it seems to me like I think she also probably has a very negative sense of self. She probably views herself terribly. Now, I've done a lot of reflecting since then, and I feel like this is a major turning point in my life. I could have kept going back to that dynamic, the anxiety, the ups and downs, constantly carrying her emotional state, but instead I've chosen to walk away and take the lessons with me. It's a painful lesson to learn, but a good one to learn. I wanted to share this with you and with other listeners to show just how much of an impact your content can have. Instead of getting sucked deeper into that black hole of a relationship, I've learned that I need to move past it. I've chosen growth, reflection, self-respect, which you'll never do. And a big part of that came from hearing stories, advice, and perspectives from your own content that helped me feel seen, grounded, and not alone. Oh my God, John, can I just say thank you so much for writing this, truly from the bottom of my heart. There are times where I could relate to this to people I'm working with, but I have to say something in this really reflects to things I've gone through with people that are like this as well. And I really wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry you've gone through this because I really relate to this experience. Describing it, that feeling of like not wanting to get sucked into that black hole of a relationship. God, I reckon I've said that about particular people in my life more times than I care to count, if I'm completely honest. And that's not to say I've had multiple people who've given that feeling, but I can think of a few. And I have to tell you, there's been narcissistic vibes in all of them. And, it's just one of those things where there will come a point in time where eventually there's a good point for reflection being like, okay, what drew me to this? That's further down the line. But I will say that it's a really powerful experience when in your body you're being drained and it's just a feeling like of walking on eggshells. I distinctly remember probably the last major romantic interest that I had like that was 5 years ago. And oh God, walking away and not speaking out was the best thing I ever did. Some people I'm all about, saying, hey, if you want to get back in touch with this person, let them know how they really hurt you, by all means, go ahead. But there's something about these more narcissistic individuals where I just feel like it falls on deaf fucking ears. And it's just like, not that it doesn't on severe avoidance, that it absolutely usually does fall on deaf ears with those people. But there's something about these kinds of folk where it's all about domination, control, and it's just it ups the ante of the usual severe avoidance stuff, where these individuals really want power as well. And it's just you got to break free for your own sanity. Anyways, John, thank you for sending in this letter. Truly. I think your story is one of the more severe ones I've heard, if I'm completely honest, in that there is some dark shit with this one. Um, but I have to say, it still has a lot of themes that I think a lot of people can relate to. So I'm so glad that you found that listening to other people's stories has really helped you. But I will say this one, oh God, I could feel it. Like I'll go back to that line. Just didn't want to get sucked deeper into that black hole of a relationship, and I've learned that I need to move past it. True words have never been spoken. I have done the same. And can I tell you, it's been the best thing for me. And oh God, the self-reflection that comes off the back of that being like, how did I get here? Ugh. Usually there's more than one. If we've dated someone like this, there's usually more than one of these individuals in our lives, unfortunately. I'm hoping it's only one in your case, and that was with Charlotte. I know she's gone through a lot. I know she's been through some terrible stuff, but it sounds like the way she's adapted to the world is horrible. She doesn't deserve what she's been through. I just wish she didn't turn out like this. Ugh. Just gross. Anyways, I'll stop singing your praises and just simply say, I think you handled this exceptionally well. I love the way you rounded this out, and I wish you the best in your recovery and all that goes forward from here.